Everyone, I'm Allie Buckman with the Potomac Bead Company, and today I get the pleasure of doing another one of our Potomac Bead Company 2016 Design Challenge winner designs. This one here is the Hidden Rainbow design, which is a nice netted design that works up really great with a number of different materials, so you'll be able to use all kinds of different things. It features our faceted round trios or just plain round trios. Either one will work. This hidden rainbow design was designed by Phyllis Brunson Sutton, and it really lays great as a collar around the neck, really highlights the trio beads that we have, and as well you can use all different things here in the fringe as you work on it. In her design, Phyllis used a nice collection of some black and silver and pewter colors. I went a little bit lighter here with the goldens and the bronze. For the design, I am using 4 different seed beads. I'm going to be using a tiny 15-0 there in the middle in light smoky topaz gold. That is in between and at the start of some of that lacing effect with my metallic dark bronze 8-0 seed bead. And then also I use another 8-0 seed bead further down in the design to brighten it up a little bit next to these bronzite beads. And that one is the galvanized yellow gold color of seed bead. For my 11-0 seed bead, I really kind of wanted it to stand out and to shine, and I chose to use one of the Toho colors, and this is the Perma Finish Sweet Blush color. You use a lot of that seed bead as you're designing, so whatever 11-0 you pick out, you're going to use a lot of that bead. You can see I almost went through a full tube of that as I was working. You can also change up the color, use multiple colors, and kind of have fun with it. I just kept the color palette nice and simple, so that way you wouldn't have to think too much as we are going to create this. You're not going to have to do lots of counting or anything like that. We're just going to keep the colors really, really nice and simple. I am highlighting the round trios here, and I've chosen the faceted round trios. For the faceted round trios, you're going to need about 42 of those beads. Whether or not you use the faceted or the smooth round trios doesn't really matter. I did forget to mention here on the left-hand side, we'll do a little drop down as I'm doing this with links to the different products. If you need to purchase any of those products, we'll do links that you can purchase from me online there. You can also take that list to your local Potomac Bead Company store and pick up the materials as well. Another Potomac Bead Company product that's used in this necklace is our Potomac crystal. We have the Rondelles here, and these are our 3x4mm Rondelles in the champagne color. And then I'm using some of our new 4mm round crystals, and these are in the gold champagne AB. So it's just a tiny bit color difference, but the AB gives it a little bit more shine and a little bit bigger bead here at the bottom. You will need 1 tube of each of those beads in order to complete this project. A lot of the different beads that you use, you can pop in at different places in the design as well if you want to kind of change it up. So don't limit yourself to using the exact beads in the same place that I did. You can put crystals further up. You may use a full tube, you may use a half tube, so that's why I'm not giving you exact counts on your crystals. A bead that I did use to soften it up also is a 4mm glass pearl, and this is a Czech glass pearl in this shiny beige color. I did 2 strands of it that we'll be working with. If you want to work along, 2 strands will work. You can do 1 strand as well if you don't want to get that 2 strands going on, because I did use it further in the project. You can decide that you don't want to use it so much in your project as we're working on it and we're getting it in. You can use crystals in this place and so forth. So during the video here, as we're creating this design, I'll give you some hints to when to use different materials, when you can use crystals, and vice versa. At the very end of the design also, I have these darker beads that we'll be adding in, which are the faceted bronzite. These are an 8mm bead, which gives it a nice dark look here at the base. You could brighten it up. You can use Czech glass, you can use gemstones, you can use crystal drops, you can use briolettes. Really anything that you have in your bead stock can go in here, which is again why this is a great design, because you can use a variety of different beads as you're creating your loops and your trim on this netted necklace. The whole necklace will close off and we'll add a cup button to it. You can use a cup button or you can use a bead clasp, either way. The necklace, whether or not you're using the gemstones or you're using Czech glass or you're using cut crystal, it's a heavy necklace, so the cup button actually holds really well because there's a lot of weight holding this down. The whole project will be strung on .006 wildfire beading thread, and I've chosen the green color to use with my color palette that we're working with. Sitting handy also, I have my bead mat and a size 10 needle sticking in it that I'll be working with to actually thread my project. If you need help threading your thread, you can get a thread zap 2. Burn the thread off your spool and then take a needle nose pliers, just kind of flatten out the end, and you'll be able to thread your needle rather easily as you're working. You can work on a bead on it board or that bead mat, whichever you prefer. And just a note for this, it does use a lot of thread, so keep your thread nice and handy because we'll be adding thread in multiple locations as we create this nice color necklace. To get started on the design, you are going to want to lay out your 11/0, your 8/0, and your 15/0 seed bead. We're going to start right at the top of the necklace and continue on from there. So to get started, I have my pile of my 3 seed beads, my 15, my 8, and my 11/0 seed bead, and I'm just going to be working on this top line right along here. The top line pattern is very simple, and I also have my cut button ready to add as I get to the very end. On the starter end of my needle and thread, I did put a stop bead, and this is just an aluminum silver bead that I had near me. I know that it's not going to be connected as part of my project. When you do a stop bead, you just want to run your thread and needle through that bead 2 times away from the tail, which I just have about a 2-inch tail, 2.5 inches, just to tie on and to knot at the very end. To start out the design, the pattern, like I said, is a very simple pattern. We're going to be using, I'll just put that right there on the edge for you. We're going to be using the 15/0, and then an 11/0, and then my 8/0. I'm going to mirror that using an 11 and a 15 on the side. That's going to be my pattern that I start out with using that 15, 11, 8, 11, 15. In between my pattern, I'm going to be adding another one here of my 8. After you add the 8, start your pattern over. So you have 15, 11, 8, 11, 15. Add an 8 and start the pattern over. 15, 11, 8, 11, 15. I'm going to do this pattern for about 16 inches. If you want your necklace to be a little bit shorter so it's higher up, you can do that as well. I'm going to do about 16 inches by the time I add my cut button and the clasp. Then the necklace is going to hang 17, and then remember it has about 1.5 inches to 2 inch drop depending on what you're using. So the longest portion will hang about 2.5 inches longer than the top. So mine will go from about 17 inches down to 19 inches. So go ahead and continue this simple pattern, doing your design with that 8/0, separating the pattern for about 16 inches or longer or shorter, depending on how long or short you want the necklace to be. Once you're done stringing your 17 inches, it's going to be time to put on the cut button. And I'm using that amber Picasso cut button. To put it on, I'm at the end of my pattern here, so I'm finishing with a 15/0 seed bead. From there, I'm going to add on 3 11/0 seed beads and go up through the back of my cut button. When I come out the front of the cut button, I'm going to add one of my 11/0 seed beads, one of my 8/0 seed beads in that bronze color, another 11/0, and then I'm going to come back through the back hole of that cut button. That's just going to decorate the edge of the cut button inside with those colors that I'm using in my project. You don't have to use anything in the middle, that's kind of up to you. I just don't like the thread exposed, so I tend to use things. After I'm coming out the back, 2 seed beads go on, and I'm going to go through that 3rd seed bead right in line here, the whole way going through the 15, the 11, and coming out that first 8/0 seed bead that's next to the end. Once I'm out that 8/0 seed bead, I'm going to get ready to start my pattern now for my little V section. To start the V section, I'm going to be sewing into every other 8/0 seed bead. The V starts with the design here, and I'm gonna get out some of my pearls here. And the V section starts now with my 1 15/0. Then I'm going to do 3 of my 11/0 seed beads, 1 of my pearls, back to 3 11/0s, 1 15, skip 1 of the 8/0 seed beads here, and go through the next. So I'm always going to be going through the 8/0 seed beads in the middle of my pattern, not the divider one. Give a nice tight pull here to make sure that there's no extra thread showing. It should be looped in fashion, so you should be able to see kind of that little loop-de-loop there. Coming out of that 8/0 seed bead, I'm going to repeat that pattern of the 15, 3 11s, glass pearl, 3 11s, and a 15. Skip my next 8/0 seed bead and go through the following. When you go through the 8/0 seed beads here at the top, you want to try to make sure that you're sewing below the first line of thread, meaning the first line of thread went on this long portion here. I want my thread to go below that first piece of thread that threads along the top because I'm building down. You can see it's going to kind of twist around a little bit until we get in and do our next level with our faceted round trios. So again, just continuing on, 15, 3 11s, glass pearl, 3 11s, 15. Skip the next 8 and sew through the next one in line, sewing below that thread line. That'll just make it sit nicer. If you happen to go above the thread line, it's not going to really matter. So you can see here, this is the look that you're getting, is those little loops kind of hanging on the bottom of your design. You're going to continue the whole length of the project with that 1 15, 3 11s, your glass pearl, your 3 11s, and your 15. Skipping 1 8 and sewing through the 8 that's in the middle of your pattern that you did on the first row. So go ahead and continue that right along the whole row of that 17 inches that you first started. Now that I'm done adding in my pearls, I'm coming out the end here near the opposite side of the cup button, and I'm coming through the 8/0. I'm then going to sew through the 11 and the 15. Coming out the end, we're going to do our loop for our cup button to fit in. So I'm going to pour out some more of my 11/0s here. We're going to do about 25 11/0s for our loop. Once you have the 25 11/0s on, we're going to reinforce the loop and get ready to add our faceted round trios. I'm putting all these on here. It doesn't really matter whether or not you use 15/0s or 11/0s or 8/0s to make the loop. That's up to you. I like the soft gold color of the Toho perma finish bead that I'm using, so I'm going to use that for the clasp as well. If you wanted to do a regular metal clasp, a lobster, a toggle, you'd want to go ahead and add wire protectors at this point, and as well on the previous side when you did the cup button, and then add your ends of your clasps. Once those beads are on, I'm coming back down the 15, back down the first 8/0, and then I'm going to go back down my project all the way to the bottom of that last V, coming through the 11/0 seed beads, as well as sewing through that Czech glass pearl. Once we're out of the Czech glass pearl, it's time to add our trios here. And the trios will get added between each of our pearls. Before the trios, we're going to add one of our 15-0 seed beads, and that's going to help to separate it out just a little bit more. As we add the trios, that's going to force those V's that we created to sit down in that little zigzag fashion. So coming out a pearl, on goes a 15, going through the top hole or one of the outer holes of the faceted round trio, add a 15, and then pick up the next pearl in line and sew through. Only sewing through the pearl. You can see that pulls that V down. Next, add a 15, another one of your trios, again through that top hole, another 15, and sew through the next pearl. So this whole step here, all we're doing is adding our pearls in, or adding our 15-0s and our round trios in between each one of our pearls as we go right along the line. As you're adding the faceted round trios, you can see the curvature also starting to happen to sit as a nice collar necklace. I thought I would record this little section here because inevitably you're going to have to add thread to this necklace. It uses a lot of thread, and what I've done is I've taken my needle off this short piece of thread. I have about 3 inches left, and I'm coming out of one of my glass pearls. I'm going to take a new piece of thread, which is another 4 to 5 feet, and I've put a needle on it. I'm going to take the new piece of thread and tie it around the old piece of thread. So right now the old piece of thread is just in the middle there, and I'm tying a knot around the old piece of thread. Pull nice and tight, hold on to the old piece of thread, and pull that knot that you just created right next to your pearl. Take the 2 ends now, both the previous thread and the new thread end, and tie the 2 together. Once I have these tied together, I'm going to give a nice tight pull. If you need to, you can also pull with your pliers. And do one more knot, and then burn down the thread ends just so they're out of the way. I'm not going to burn down to the very, very base because I'll do that after the project, but I just want to burn down enough that the thread doesn't get caught, but that I have a place where I can see where I need to glue if you like to glue. If you don't like to glue, you're going to go ahead and burn the thread edges down. That'll create like a stop on each thread end that the new thread will not disconnect from that area. So that was how to add your thread, and I'm going to continue on adding in my faceted round trios. I'm at the end adding my round trios here, and you can see that netting effect that's going on the whole way back from the beginning, and the slight curvature that the necklace is starting to have, and that's going to get a little tiny bit more exaggerated when we add our fringe and the bottom portion. But after adding in that last faceted trio, you're going to be going through the pearl that's closest to the cup button, and we're going to use this opportunity to reinforce the cup button. Go back up the 11 O's on the side of the pearl, through the 15 O seed bead, and through the 8 O seed bead right there at the end. Once you're out the 8 O seed bead, I want you to reinforce the whole cup button area by going back up one side through the 11s and through the top of the cup button and in through the other portion as well. And this is giving me a fight here to go through. Sometimes if you have a bead that is not being super cooperative to get in between beads, if you pull the thread back a tiny bit, that's going to throw your bead that you're coming off just a little bit from the row, and that's going to usually make enough space in between that I can fit my needle in there. If not, you can kind of bend the project back on its side, and that'll give you enough room there as well. Once you're back through reinforcing, we're going to come down and add some of our loops. So my needle's going back up through. I'm going to bring it closer there in order to get it bent enough. This is also going to tighten that last row of my faceted round trios. Once you're through, come down the cut button on the opposite side and go through the opposite side seed beads. Coming out then, I want to come out towards the base and out that last pearl bead that we just came up through. So our needle is going to be exiting our pearl to get ready to add in our fringe and the bottom portion of our faceted round trios. Coming back down the end, I had said that we're going to use 20 of our basically bigger beads. So we have about 40 of our faceted round trios. I'm not going to use those bigger beads until I get closer to the middle of my necklace. Otherwise, it's going to make it pretty heavy. So in the back, I'm just going to be using some of my Tohos, again in that bronze color, and some of my crystal rondelles to get started. Then we'll add in the bigger beads here right along the bottom as we get closer in. So because I know I have about 40 faceted round trios on, we're going to be using about 10 of those where we're not actually going to be putting any of our crystals on. You can see here that you add a crystal, we're adding crystals between each of our baseline of our faceted round trios. So we're going to be adding crystals underneath here and then dropping down some crystals as we go along, picking up the third hole of the faceted round trio. For this project, you're not actually going to be using the second hole of the trio. Whether or not you use faceted rounds or smooth rounds doesn't matter, but we're going to be skipping that middle hole. To come down from the start and to keep the necklace a little bit lighter in the back, I'm going to be using 4 of my 11/0 seed beads and sew through the bottom hole of the round trio. That's going to exit us so that we're ready to start our little bottom section. As we continue the bottom, we're going to be adding in the crystal rondelles between this row here and sewing all along the bottom. So to start out, it's going to be a 15/0, a rondelle, and a 15/0. I'm then going to sew through the bottom hole of the round trio. Again, 15, rondelle, 15, and pick up the next round trio. If I want to at this point, I could add in some of my fringe now as I'm going along, so I have 3. When you add your fringe and some of your drops in, as I did in here, what you're going to do is actually add your crystal bead. So we're adding our 15, our crystal, our 15, sew through the next faceted round trio, and when I'm exiting the trio, that's where I'm going to sew in my first little loop. My first little loop here is kind of hidden along the back, and it's going to be 4 seed beads and then either a crystal or a pearl. It's up to you. With those 2 strands of the pearls, you'll have enough extra pearls that you can add the pearls in with the design. You could add an 6/0 seed bead. You really can add anything along here. Miyuki faceted, or I'm sorry, hex cuts would look pretty as well. So this is, again, a design that you could really use a number of different things. I'm going to use some of these pearls in to hang down because I'm going to have a lot of crystals along that first row. When you're exiting a faceted round trio, and this is my 4th trio that I'm going to start the drops on, so that way around the back it's just going to be a little bit more plain. To start the drops, pick up 4 of your 11/0 seed beads. Then we're going to pick up an 8/0 seed bead in the bronze color, 1 of our pearls, and at the base of the pearls, another 11/0. So it's 4 11s, 1 8, pearl, 11. Push that all down next to my project here. And now I'm going to come back up through the base of the pearl and through the 8/0 seed bead. You're going to pull nice and tight so you don't have any extra thread exposed, and that's just going to drop one of those 11 seed beads right to the base. If you wanted to have it more that the pearl stands out, you could also just use a 15 seed bead and use the 15 at the bottom. When I'm exiting, I'm going to add 4 more 11 seed beads. Go back to the starting side of that round trio that you're coming out of, and I'm going to sew back through that hole that I'm coming out of, that bottom hole of the round trio, one more time. What that's going to do is hang that drop down just nice and simply there as a little peak. Add your next grouping here of your crystal and 15-ohs. Sew through the next of our faceted round trios. You're going to want to add in another little drop section. So again, we're coming out of our faceted round trio. On goes 4 of our 11s. One of our pearls. Then we're going to do one of our 8s and then one of our pearls. I like that bronze color down there at the bottom. It kind of balances it out a little bit. The crystal, or the 11 back up through the pearl, and the 8. I'm going to separate my needle here through that 8. Give a nice tight pull so I have no thread exposing. On go 4 more of my 11s and back through the whole of the faceted round trio that I'm exiting, starting from the left hand side and going towards the right. And that's going to add my second drop there. As you continue the design, we're going to add these drops the whole length of the necklace. I'm then going to come back and we're going to add drops off of the crystals. I'll also show you how to add more. If you want to go a little bit more and add some more fringe, you can do that as well. In Phyllis's design, she had it with about 3 or 4 loops going on, so you can really stop this at any point or you can add to it. I'm going to continue on the whole length of the necklace till I have my last 3 of my faceted round trios, adding these little peaks here with the pearls at the base. So just to show the necklace, it's hard to keep it all in frame here, but just to show the necklace as I'm working on it, when you get to the very end of the necklace here, I just wanted to stop to tell you, when you get to the end of your round trios, as you're getting finished with adding that little peak there, you want to make sure that you have 3 round trios, just like the start of the project, that don't have any of the fringe on it. We're going to make the fringe kind of graduated towards the back. So when I get here to the end, all I'm going to do is just add my last couple Potomac crystals here in between the faceted rondelles and string right down along this edge here, finishing off the design. If you want to make the design even kind of more graduated, you can do that starting further back. That's up to you. Or further, towards the center rather, with the fringe. So you can really start wherever you want to with this project. As I finish here, I'm going to come up the side of my faceted round trio and use this opportunity to reinforce the loop that I created. So just like on the round trio here on the button side, I'm going to take 4 of my 11 seed beads, and then I'm going to pick up through the pearl and up through the end of the clasp here. Back through that seed bead and out through the 15. Reinforce my loop going back through the whole entire loop. Then off the button. And once I'm down through the loop 2, I'm going to use this place to tie off my beginning thread. So remember, in the very beginning of the project, we left about 2 inches, and that, like I said, was just to tie off the thread. So that way we had a portion at the start to begin the project. So I'm going to take this here and tie off that extra knot. So once that cording comes through and you get a chance You can knot off the end here, making sure to give a nice tight pull because that center strand there, that first strand, is going to actually be pulling the very first row of beads. So I'm going to do a nice square knot right over left and then left over right. And just let that thread end hang out there until we get finished with the project. I then want to come back down the project, back through my beads, towards my faceted round trios. So if you need to, you can kind of throw on a size 12 needle if you need to. I'm okay getting my 10 through there. It gets a little bit tight through those 15 OC beads, but it's manageable. Where I want to get to is down through that kind of starting, ending line. And back through all of those 11 OC beads. Back through the end here. And I'm going to go the whole way down that center or that end line, going back through the crystals, the faceted trios, the whole way till I get into my third little triangle there I've created. Because remember, again, I'm going to be graduating that look that I have. The next thing that we're going to add in here is going to be my loop around my Bronzite beads, as well as putting my Bronzite beads in place. The V's that we created sit right below the faceted round trio. The loops and the Bronzite beads that we are going to be adding are going to sit right below our crystals. So as you're doing your center line here and you're getting towards your start of your V beads, you're just going to go right through the faceted round trios and just kind of ignore the fact that those V's are even there. Again, I'm going the whole way back here to that third one and through. After I come out the third round trio, I'm going to go through my 15-0 and through my crystal. So this again is coming out after the third V, so the crystal right after the third V. Here's where we're going to take our Bronzite beads and get ready to do our loops, as well as getting into the actual Bronzite pieces. To add my Bronzite, I have my 11 OC beads here and that other 8O color in the galvanized, the Duracoat galvanized yellow gold. It's a little bit brighter than the gold color. And what I'm going to do is similar to the pearls, I'm going to add 3 of my 11 OC beads, 1 of my 8O beads, and a Bronzite bead. You can see it's going to hang right there just a little bit lower than the pearl. After the bead, just like I did with the pearl, I'm going to take an 11-0, put that on, and go back up through the Bronzite bead and back up through my 8-0. Pull nice and tight, getting rid of all that slack. Add 3 more 11-0s, and I'm going to sew through the crystal just like I did with my Bronzite bead. Or I'm sorry, with my faceted round trio. Going back through. I'm sewing just through the crystal, not through any of the 15s, and that creates a little Bronzite drop there. I'm going to do this for 2 passes, and then I'm going to actually add another loop around the Bronzite bead to fill it out like Phyllis did. So I have my beads going through, coming out my crystal. You can see my thread is getting short, so I'll need to tie on some more, just like I showed previously. On goes 3 of my 11-0s, 1 of my 8-0, Bronzite, 11-0. Take your needle and thread back up through your Bronzite bead, back up through the 8, and then we're going to add our 3 more 11 OC beads. So just to show you those 3 beads versus the 2 that don't have the netting around them, and these 3 have the increased loops around them, I'm going to continue increasing and doing a little bit more with those loops by adding in some of my round crystals now. You can really do it freeform from this point on, adding your crystals, you just want to make sure as you add your crystals and your bronzite beads, keep an eye on when you get to the center, because you want to make sure that whatever you do on the left-hand side of the necklace as you get to center, you also do on the right-hand side of the necklace. So I'm going to continue on adding to my number of seed beads that I have in on the sides, adding in some of my rounds to do a little bit more of a different color of bling there at the bottom. I think Phyllis had about 4 colors of crystals that she was working with. So I'm going to add in some more crystal colors by adding in some of those round crystal, the 4mm round crystals as well, and adding in some of the gold seed beads at the bottom and really playing with some of those fringe as I add in more of the bronzite and more of my loops. So I've been working for a while getting all of these bronzite beads in, and when you look at the design as you start to finish and start to get it moving, you can see, I'll try to fold this one back here, you can see the amount of work that goes into it. I think I'm on about 16 feet of beading thread. When I was looking at the design by Phyllis, you can also see that she did even more loops, doing loops, like I said, doing a second one again around. I'm going to keep it simple and just this one loop and the drop. You can go back through after you're finished if you want, add another loop, add some longer loops. I graduated it slightly, but not much. My only difference in graduation was going from those 8 seed beads to 10 seed beads. And then in the very center here, I just did 3 where I used 12 seed beads on each side. So you want to make sure as you're doing this to kind of pay attention as you're working along your sides here of your collar so you get the spacing right. As I get to the end here, I'll show you. I'm at the point now where I've counted back and I'm on the 2 beads that actually don't get any design or any loops around them. So I'm going to go in here and add my last bronzite bead, adding my 3 seed beads and then my gold and my bronzite bead, my 11-0 at the base, and then back up through. To finish the design, we're going to do just like we did at the start, where I'm going to run my thread and needle right along the crystals and the faceted round trios, and that's going to end the project. So it is a lengthy project with a lot of sewing. Got caught up on some news while I was doing this project, so it's a good couple evening project. It's an easy one to sit down and you can look and see exactly where you left off. You don't have to do a lot of counting, so you can have that project there finished. Then I'm taking that thread and needle back down to the end, at the very end here, making sure not to get caught on anything. And once at the end, because you've already tied off, and we've already actually reinforced our cut button, you can go ahead in right at the end and just tie off your thread. If you want to, you can go one more time and reinforce that button. That's up to you. Or you can just tie the thread off at a very, very end here, bring it back into the middle. You can sew it into that netting that you did. So I'm going right here to the end just to pull that last line in. When I'm coming out the end, I'm going to start knotting off my thread, grabbing a thread underneath some of the beads, one of the bridge threads, and sewing through that bridge thread with my thread and needle, creating a knot. Go in then and do that several other times along your project. And then once you have that done, we're just going to go in, I'm going to go in and burn off my thread ends, drop a little dab of glue on the project where those knots are, and then you're actually finished with your collar. The possibilities, like I said, of this necklace are pretty much endless. You can do bigger fringe, you could go back through and hang more fringe off the bottom, you could hang a pendant right in the middle, more crystals. Because it is a netted project at the top and then you have that fringe at the bottom, you really can kind of go to town. I actually had some spike beads that I was possibly going to add in, but decided to go with this Bronzite because I liked the look and I thought it kept more to Phyllis's original design with her round crystals. I love gemstones, so switched it up to some gemstones and the color worked really nicely. So if you do get a chance to create a necklace like this with that lace netted collar portion and then the fringe hanging down, the round trios make a really great base because you do have multiple holes in order to go through, since you're sewing so many times through the project as you add more layers. If you get a chance to pick up the round trios, you can pick them up in the smooth or the faceted, like the blue one that I had showed you with just the plain petrol color of the pastel round trio. So you can really change up the design. Again, change whatever you're hanging down. Start it further in the middle. You can go further out to the ends and have it all full. So have fun creating. And if you do get a chance and you need any of the materials, you can go back to the beginning of the video to the little drop down that lists all the different materials and the quantities that you need. Or you can look below this video to the little description of the video. There's a little button there you can press that says show more, and that'll give you the details to the actual colors and the links that were used in the projects for the different styles of the beads. As always, you can pick up your materials at any Potomac Bead Company location, as well as, again, shop from me online. If you like this project, projects like this, you can also subscribe to this YouTube channel, share the videos with the friends that you think might like it as well. And you can stay connected with us, like our 2016 Potomac Bead Company Challenge, where this design was submitted, by joining our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. Ask to join that and really get involved with a great community of peers in your jewelry making. You can ask questions, get answered, and really interact a lot with us. So thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and have fun making this beautiful fringe necklace here with whatever beads you desire and whatever beads you create. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone.